Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Editor-at-Large, CNET, Brian Cooley.
Hey everybody. Good morning. Good to see you again. And welcome to the Connected Car Expo 2015. I can honestly say this is one of the absolutely most interesting technology conferences on the calendar all year, anywhere in the world, because the subject that we talk about here is changing so dramatically. It's such an enormous interwoven part of everybody's lives, and it's changing in both terms of information, entertainment, navigation, logistics. So many aspects of the car will be radically different in less than 20 years, and you're here at a moment in history when you'll be able to look back and say it started, and of course, more importantly, today, take advantage of how it's getting up and running in so many avenues. From one hub, we have so many spokes of innovation. So it's good to see you here today. We have an incredible program coming up through the day here, and I want to get started with a few thoughts just to kind of get your mind, get the juices flowing, get you focused on what it means to be talking about connected cars. Now, we've been covering connected cars and cars as a digital product at CNET for 10 years. It's not a completely new idea, the digitization and electronics that are flowing into vehicles. But it's become so strong and so much of a differentiator and a definer of the automotive market that we have recently just announced within the last 48 hours, we have an entirely new website being built that's going to be devoted to the idea of the car of the future. High-tech cars, modern driving, but also the future of performance, the way we relate to the car and where it fits in our lives in such a different way that we felt we needed a completely new website. So this is the first major new automotive property to be launched in what I call the connected car era, and it'll be coming out public in just a few months, and I invite you to follow us on any of the social media platforms there to know more. And we've got our editor-in-chief of Roadshow, Tim Stevens, here in the audience today. You can find him, myself, or our CNET General Manager, Mark Larkin, if you want to find out more. Let's get a focus here on how cars are taking their seat at the table of electronics and the digital connected world. Now, I like to start by moving out from cars, zooming back a little bit, and defining technology. When I say technology, high tech, the first thing in your mind, I'm sure, is this mental picture. As it should be. We have so many of these devices in our lives, but these are actually not technology. These are electronics. Technology is a word that, as you know, has a definition you can look up in the dictionary. It's a word that predates the era of electronics. The word technology predates the era of electricity. It simply means, if you boil it down, how we get things done. In the vehicle, that means how we get where we want to go, how we do so efficiently, comfortably, with the vehicle serving us, as opposed to us having to alter our lives around the nature of transportation. And that's really getting turbocharged in this connected digital era of vehicles. Four things I want to give you that underlie that idea as you look at this space from whatever point of view. We have so many different professionals in the room here, but understand that great car technology must be transparent. That means it limits the distraction of using it with a clean interface, of course, and also filtering what kind of inputs you get. Too much is too much, which isn't always the case in a lot of media. And to make sure that the way you give it inputs, the way you tell it what you want, where you need to go, what you want from the vehicle or infrastructure is very clear, easy, and natural. Which brings us to intuitive. That means great car technology, connected car technology, has to be easy to understand how to use, but also easy to understand why to use it. Because connected car tech speaks to the widest array of people. You don't have necessarily just a bunch of geeks or smartphone buffs or TV enthusiasts or what other slice you look at. Like television and a few other areas of tech, the car speaks to the entire gutter-to-gutter slice of the world's population. And so it's got to be easy for any constituency to understand why there's a benefit to a given connected or connected autonomous feature. Intimate is the future of the car. The relationship with your car now is relatively dumb if you think about it. The car doesn't learn about you. It doesn't know more about you the day you sell it than it did the day you bought it and brought it home. It's just kind of a cold machine for the most part. In the future, the personalization that will be flowing into the car through its connectivity will make it better today than it was yesterday. More about me, better tuned to what I need from it, as well as services that it will bring in that I want to follow me into the car and not just have them live on my phone or on my desktop, my tablet, or on my television, within reason, of course. And finally, the concept of constant is important. Right now, the car is kind of an island. You do all these behaviors in your life, and then when you get in the car, they're a little different. You use different navigation in the dash, maybe some different media services. Maybe you feel a little bit cut off or a little bit sort of awkwardly connected to things you do outside the car. That will change as we have a constant heartbeat of all of our services and relationships and personalization in the digital world following us in the car consistently. So it feels like the same space, just one that's moving, as opposed to the static ones that we're in normally in our everyday life. So let's take a look at the broader area of technology that the connected car is taking its place in. The largest thing going on in tech worldwide is the next billion. This is the concept of the next billion people, and I mean that literally, who are going to get on a smartphone for the first time. Getting on a smartphone is an incredibly key moment in a person's life on this planet. It takes you into a 24/7, highly personalized, constantly interactive, mobile and transportable era of living. It's really transformative. Over the top, the television revolution, so much of that going on here in this city with the enormous content players here that are starting to architect the future of content that streams to your TV versus broadcast. And then we have the connected car revolution. These are in relative size and relative time to the size that they'll get in the population. Connected cars are large. They'll take a little longer to propagate because it is a slow turnover product, of course, compared to buying a new phone or a new television, but related to all of these. And then you have these other sort of three twins, I'd say: wearable tech, smart home technology, virtual reality. These are the 6 big things going on in tech today that have any connection at all to media, communications, entertainment, and such, and they're the ones to watch. The car is an integral part of this family as opposed to being thought of as some separate thing. I encourage you to see these as a magnetically locked together set of blocks, like I've shown them here. Now, this idea of the next billion is important. I want to amplify that, even though it's not necessarily about cars. It's about smartphones, of course. But we finished up last year with about 1.75 billion people on a smartphone, and I described how important of a device that is to make you part of the digitally connected world that is also where you'll start to meet the car. In just a few years, we will get to roughly, and this is a very conservative estimate, by the way, roughly 1 billion more people on smartphones around the world. That is the largest growth of any sort of technology times such a powerful technology that it is the biggest single trend. I bring this up and I hammer this point because this is what sets expectations in many ways for what we want in the connected car. You know that the phone you've got is the one that kind of gets you aligned into what you expect from a connected car in terms of all that infotainment. Autonomous driving is a little different thing, but is also related. The devices out there have become primary in our lives, as the connected car will as well. Look at these headlines from around the U.S. in just the last 6 to 9 months. A smattering of them that you may have heard or may know about, or maybe they reflect your progress in your digital life. But these are amazing headlines that remind us the phone is now central to the entire digital world. It's not the computer, it's not the tablet, it's not the connected television. Those are important constituencies, but the phone is it. It's the center of the bullseye, and it ties so nicely to the car in terms of those behaviors I'm talking about that it gives us a very good assay of what consumers expect, where they're going, and enormous support from this other industry, the mobile electronics industry, to help infuse good things into automotive, as you're going to hear throughout the day today. Now, specifically, connected cars you first think of as infotainment, bringing the attributes of smartphone and such to the dash. Cars connect for several reasons. Communication, internet style, which is more about web messaging and social now than it is about calling and SMS texting. Navigation, we all expect live search as opposed to static search, like many cars on the road still do, with a DVD in the trunk or an SD card that goes stale every day until and unless you update it. Entertainment, we're becoming a streaming culture, as we know. We're not so much about physical media. We're not even that much about MP3s and files on a device and plugging in your phone, or certainly not an iPod anymore. And of course, the telematics piece, unique to cars. This is the Internet of Things slice that brings the car actually to the forefront of IoT for most consumers. It will be perhaps the first Internet of Things device in most consumers' lives, certainly in the United States, where they can locate, command, control, look at the charge state, the lights, the locks, what have you, of their car, while it's anywhere in the world for that matter, because it's internet connected. We had Ford make an announcement today with their Sync 3 technology coming on board to this. And then in the middle of that is sort of this other completely separate camp of autonomy, how connectivity will help cars become better self-driving vehicles, though most manufacturers will tell you that's going to augment self-driving. It's not the gatekeeper to getting to self-driving. Critical things to look at, of course, are these two mobile players coming in the car. Apple CarPlay on the left, Google's Android Auto on the right. These are very important. They're deceptively simple looking because it's like, okay, I get it. It's my phone on the dash. Sounds like a cable could have done that, right? They're much more nuanced than that, because what these do is play the hits of mobile. They play the hits of smartphone on your dash. This is what I talked about earlier on one of those first slides. It's about filtering. It's about changing the input interface. It's also about preserving muscle memory that you've already learned on your mobile that you use constantly and transferring that into the dash. So it's a much more satisfying constant experience. And so these two are exceptionally powerful technologies from obviously two of the most influential companies in tech in the world, for that matter. It's a bit of an uneasy relationship at times because car makers see these as excellent technologies that their consumers can relate to and are asking for, but also technologies that are the same across any car maker that adopts them. So they are a de-differentiator, which is not something automakers tend to race toward, but at the same time, they're also inevitable in a sense. And we're going to be hearing more about this platform. I wouldn't call it a war, I'd call it a migration that we'll hear about later on through our conference today. Here's an issue. Recent BI research that came up, a good infographic they did, 44% of consumers in the US have never heard of what we're talking about here today, the connected car. Another 42% have heard of them, but don't know what they are. So that basically should all be one number, right? We're looking at 86% are in the dark about what we're here for today. And then you've got about 14% who said, yeah, I know what it is, and I got a pretty good idea what it would do. I've heard the term, and I'm cognizant. This is not discouraging in the least. In our 21 years at CNET, we've seen many enormously popular technologies go through a curve like this, where the word may be heard, and that may be all people know, from smartphone to HD TV to smart TV and many other technologies. They had to go through a gestation period of getting understood. Always in whatever business you're doing, make sure you don't assume that the connected car is understood by your audience, regardless of what point of view you're coming from. We need to bring consumers along so that we have a good base of appreciation for the amazing technology that you're hearing about being developed every year at this conference and especially today. Now this is interesting. Interesting research you're going to hear in detail later from J.D. Power. Look at these major car technologies that you may know. Concierge services that are on the rearview mirror, self-parking aids, apps for streaming and such in the dashboard, an in-car Wi-Fi hotspot, or a head-up display. These are among the technologies that they recently did some survey on for consumer adoption and usage of. And look at the number of people they found who never use them. These are substantial slices of people who have them in their car, but don't ever do anything, don't exploit them. This is an understanding gap, not understanding just how to use them, but also understanding the value of them. That's that intuitive piece I talked about earlier. Make it clear to know that I, A, have it, B, how do I use it, but the key part of intuitive is make it super clear why I would use it, where the value lies. There's a lot of stuff going on. This is just a small piece of the technologies flowing into cars. We've got an onslaught hitting consumers. As you listen and hear so many great discussions, and as you ask questions today, think about asking the question on the intuitive point. How will you, whoever's up here, how will you make it intuitive to use, but also to appreciate, to print, to cut through, so that the consumers out there that are so broad in the auto industry will understand that there's a value there, and we haven't gone to all this effort for naught. Quick couple thoughts on autonomy, the other part of connected driving, connected cars. This is, of course, radical and revolutionary stuff, more than any other part of this conference that we're talking about here today. Look at Mercedes, for example. For them, autonomy means a new definition of luxury. Space on the road, social engagement with people, and the luxury of time. Take a look at what you'd see from Volvo, for example. Their remarkable Drive Me program is just getting launched in Sweden, in Gothenburg. They'll have 100 cars doing this on the road in actual trials. Or on the way to work, you can take back some time and then re-engage when you get to a certain set of road conditions to finish your drive. A little slice of time coming back. Look what Google's doing with their latest car, the little bubble cars that they've been launching lately. Notice the reactions and the nature of the people inside there. If you didn't see the outside of this video where you see the headliner and all the car cues, you wouldn't know they're in a car. Those are not car expressions. This is asking the key question that the Google car and others pose. What would you do if you didn't have to drive? Rephrase it. What will you do when you don't have to drive? And look at even a very exotic maker like RINSPEED, a boutique maker in Switzerland that is, this is a video that we would have laughed at with peals of laughter and tears raining down our face 2 or 3 years ago. Today we look at it and go, all right, it's out there, but it's not that out there. The future of a multi-screen, media-centric vehicle with an espresso machine, of course, because they're Europeans. None of this is far-fetched anymore, which brings us to the pros and cons of autonomy powered by connections. On the green light side, the big one is accident reduction. There are predictions that literally in 20 years we could see 75 to 90% reduction of human-caused accidents, which of course are the majority of accidents. The other big one is personal time recapture, getting some time back from the chore of driving. It's the lowest value thing we do. I don't care how much money you make, the biggest waste of your time, the lowest appreciation of what you're worth every day is the drive to and from work, when you're doing very low value work to get to the high value job. And then you've got some other things further down the road, congestion reduction, hello Los Angeles, better road utilization, reduced fuel consumption and therefore reduced emissions. But take a look at what Google's executive chairman, Eric Schmidt, said just a couple of years ago. A famous quote you may have heard, but here's how a techie sees it if you really distill it down.
Your car should drive itself. It's amazing to me that we let humans drive cars. Computers should drive cars. It's obvious, right? If you think about it, it's a bug that cars were invented before computers.
It's pretty stark. How many of you are outraged by that point of view? Few hands? Scary, okay. Scared, outraged, doubtful. A lot of skepticism, I'm sure, around such a stark view, which is where we get the red light side, the pushback from consumers. It is very reasonable at this point. I'm a good driver. We all believe that. We all try to be that. None of us go out and say, I'm going to be a crappy driver and be irresponsible today. But the accident statistics anywhere in the world tell us otherwise. I like to drive. I get this one a lot from people who push back hard on this autonomous thing. Well, let's go get in your commute, the majority of your driving. And I bet you don't. You like to drive sometimes, and you like the option to drive when you want, but that isn't the same as liking driving most of the time. I don't trust computers, another big one out there, right? Everyone imagines the blue screen of death and their car just going off to whatever's on the side of the road, hopefully not an immovable object. But if you bank, go to the doctor, or fly, or do almost anything else, you do trust computers. It's a different kind of computer that we're talking about in the mission-critical application than, a garden variety desktop you might buy at the computer store. And of course, the big one will be, what will this cost? This is not going to be an inexpensive technology to add, but it's going to come down market rapidly because that's where so many of the benefits on the left come from, not by keeping it locked up in premium cars at the six-figure price level. And car makers and policy incentors know that. The road to autonomy is a quick one. We're in the middle of it now. You've got sort of very aggressive avant-garde car makers, if you will, like Tesla, that are already pushing a lot of the most powerful partial self-driving technologies out there. The Volvo XC90, Mary Garcetti talked about, has remarkable self-driving ability in partiality. Audi has something called piloted driving. Cadillac and General Motors call it Super Cruise. Even on the value side, we'll have Hyundai with traffic jam assistant. These all do about the same thing. They take back part of the driving task, and they're coming in the next few years. After around 2020, we turn the corner and start to step on the gas toward largely self-driving cars and then fully self-driving cars. And look at some of those benchmarks further out. When the European Commission says accident-free EU by 2050, that might actually be a conservative guess, depending how well the penetration of these vehicles go into the marketplace itself. So those are some of the thoughts I just wanted to give you with to start thinking about where the connected car fits in the broader world of technology. We have so many good, specific, really insightful panels coming up today.